Clara never imagined that her life would change so drastically. That afternoon seemed like any other. She left the hospital after a long shift, feeling exhaustion in every muscle of her body. She got into her car and started the engine, longing for the comfort of her home. However, something felt different. She couldn't put it into words, but a strange sensation, almost like a premonition, surrounded her. Her breathing became heavy. A shiver ran down her spine, and within seconds, a sharp pain in her chest paralyzed her. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel, and before she could react, the world went dark in an instant. But the truly surprising part was not the end of her life, but what happened next. In the blink of an eye, Clara felt herself floating outside of her own body. From above, she watched in awe as the scene unfolded. Her wrecked car, the paramedics desperately working to revive her, the sound of sirens echoing in the distance. The strange thing was that she didn't feel fear or anguish. On the contrary, an indescribable peace surrounded her, as if she had been wrapped in a warm and loving breeze. Her senses were sharper than ever. She could hear the thoughts of those around her, perceive their emotions with absolute clarity, and feel the heartbeat of the universe in every fiber of her being. Then, something caught her attention. A bright light appeared in the distanza light that wasn't just dazzling, but had an energy of its own. It wasn't an ordinary light. It was a call. A whisper that didn't come from a voice, but from the depths of her soul. Without hesitation, Clara allowed herself to be drawn toward it, moving closer with a sense of absolute surrender. With each step, something inside her changed. Her worries, her fears, her pain, all dissolved like sand in the wind. And then she saw him, Jesus. He wasn't a blurry image or an ethereal figure. He was a real, tangible presence, more alive and powerful than anything she had ever experienced before. His eyes, filled with infinite wisdom, looked at her with a love that encompassed everything. In his gaze, she found all the answers, all the certainty, everything she had ever searched for without even knowing it. It was as if every particle of her existence had been leading to this moment. Jesus extended his hand, and at that instant, Clara noticed something she had never perceived so clearly before. On her own hands, a mark in the shape of an M glowed with a soft, comforting light. Confused, she looked up at Jesus, who smiled at her tenderly. "This mark is not here by chance," he said with a serene yet authoritative voice. "It is a symbol of who you are and of the mission you have in this world." A shiver ran through Clara's being. Mission? She had always felt deep in her heart that her life had a special purpose, but she had never known what it was. And now, in this very moment, everything made sense. Jesus continued, "Every soul carries signs that connect it to its divine purpose. This mark on your skin represents mission, mercy, and manifestation. It is a reminder that you were created with intention and love, and that there is a greater purpose for you." Jesus' words echoed in her soul like a sacred chant. Suddenly, her life unfolded before her eyes, not just as memories, but as scenes filled with meaning. Every moment of her existence took on a new depth, a new dimension. She remembered the days when she felt like her actions didn't matter, the times she doubted her path. But now, she saw it with absolute clarity. Every kind gesture, every word of encouragement, every small, selfless act had been a spark of light in the world. Nothing had been in vain. But she also saw her mistakes. She saw the moments when she let fear guide her decisions, the times she allowed despair to consume her. She observed the instances when, unintentionally, she had hurt others with words or with silence. She felt no judgment, no condemnation, only infinite love and boundless compassion. "Every experience is a teacher," Jesus said with a gentleness that pierced her soul. "The goal is not perfection, but growth. It's not about avoiding mistakes, but transforming them with love." Jesus' words were etched deep within her. She understood that her life, with all its triumphs and failures, had been part of a greater plan, a divine plan. As she moved through a tunnel of light, Clara felt she was not alone. Around her, she perceived the presence of many souls, beings filled with peace and love. They had no physical form, but their essence was unmistakable. They were family members, friends, people who had passed before her, and others she had not yet met in this life, yet with whom she felt an unexplainable connection. "Every person you have crossed paths with remains connected to you," Jesus explained. Nothing is a coincidence. Every encounter, every relationship is part of a divine plan. Clara's heart expanded. In that moment, she understood that life was not just a series of random events. Everything had a purpose. Every shared smile, every tear shed, every challenge overcome, all was part of a sacred design woven with threads of love and learning. But something unexpected happened. Just when she thought her journey was reaching its destination, a new sensation enveloped her. It was as if someone was calling her from the other side, a distant voice, filled with anguish, speaking her name. At first, she didn't understand what was happening, but then she saw it clearly. It was not yet her time. She felt a pull in her chest, a force pulling her back, and in the blink of an eye, everything changed. The sounds of the ambulance, the cold pavement beneath her, the pressure on her chest. Her lungs filled with air and a sudden gasp. Her eyes opened. She had returned. The paramedics looked at each other in astonishment. No one could explain how, after being clinically dead, her heart had started beating again. But Clara knew. She had seen the truth. She had understood her purpose. She had returned with a mission, and her life would never be the same again. Finally, they arrived at a radiant field, a place unlike anything Clara had ever seen before. It wasn't just beautiful, it was alive. The grass shimmered with golden and emerald hues, as if each blade was illuminated from within. Flowers of impossible colors swayed gently in the wind, emitting a fragrance that wasn't just a scent, but a sensation and ethereal embrace that enveloped the soul. In the sky, a warm light stretched like an eternal sunrise, with no visible sun, yet a clarity that filled every corner. Clara was in awe. She felt how every particle of that place vibrated with pure love. There were no shadows, no fear, only peace, only wholeness. But what impacted her the most was the energy emanating from the very earth beneath her. It wasn't just a landscape, it was a promise. Jesus watched her tenderly, and with his characteristic unconditional love, spoke in a serene voice. This is a reflection of what your soul can achieve. Your life is a field of harvest. What you plant in it will grow. His words sank deep into her heart. Suddenly, she understood with absolute clarity. Every thought, every action, every decision, everything was a seed. And what she chose to plant in her life would determine what would bloom along her path. Like a revelation, she saw all the times she had planted love through small gestures, the comfort offered to a patient in the hospital, a sincere smile to a stranger, an act of kindness expecting nothing in return. And she also saw the moments when she had planted fear or doubt, when she had questioned herself, when she had allowed pain to define her instead of transform her. The field around her seemed to change with each thought. Where her heart remembered love, radiant flowers blossomed. Where she recalled fear, the earth became dry and barren. Jesus looked at her with infinite compassion and spoke again. Nothing is lost. The land can always be healed. You only have to choose what to plant. Clara felt a lump in her throat. Everything was so clear, so simple, and yet so profound. Her life, like everyone's, was fertile ground waiting to be cultivated with love, with faith, with purpose. Jesus took her hands, and once again, the M-shaped mark on her skin shone with intensity. This mark is a message from the Creator, he said gently. It is a reminder that you have a mission to bring love, faith, and compassion into the world. Clara felt her soul tremble. It wasn't just a lesson, it was an undeniable truth. She had no more doubts. She had been sent into the world with a purpose. Every day of her life had meaning. Every encounter, every challenge, every moment of joy and sorrow was part of a divine plan. But my life has been full of mistakes, she whispered with a fragile voice. Jesus smiled, his gaze radiating a love greater than the universe itself. It's not about being perfect. It's about loving, about learning, about sharing the light you have received. Clara felt her heart expand. She wanted to stay there forever, in that state of absolute clarity, of limitless love. But suddenly, she felt something strange, a gentle pull, as if something was calling her back. Jesus held her gaze with tenderness. Your time here is over. You still have much to do in the world. Clara wanted to speak, wanted to ask, but before she could utter a word, everything began to fade. The light, the field, the warmth, everything melted into a whirlwind of sensations until she felt pressure in her chest, her body, her breath, the weight of reality. With a gasp, she opened her eyes. She was in a hospital bed. Around her, familiar faces looked at her with tear-filled eyes. Her family, her loved ones. Some cried in relief, others smiled in disbelief. She had returned, but something inside her had changed forever. Her mind remembered the hospital, the accident, the pain. But her soul remembered something far greater. She brought her hands to her face, feeling her skin, her breath, her heartbeat, and then she saw it. The mark. The M was still there, as it had always been, but now she saw it with new eyes. It was no longer just a feature of her body. It was a constant reminder of her mission, a signature of the Creator imprinted on her being. Weeks passed, and Clara began to share her story, not for recognition nor for curiosity, but because she knew that her experience could bring hope. She knew that many people in the world felt the calling but didn't know how to respond. Every time she spoke, every time she shared what she had lived, she saw how the people around her were moved. Some looked at her with skepticism, others with wonder, but deep down, they all felt something. Because truth, when spoken from the soul, always resonates. And with each story she shared, with every heart she touched, Clara understood that she was fulfilling her mission. She didn't need to perform grand acts. She didn't need to be perfect. She only needed to plant love in every action, in every word, in every glance. She realized that the world was like the field she had seen in her experience. Every person was fertile ground, waiting to receive seeds of light. And if she could plant even just one, her life would have been worth it. So every day, upon waking, she looked at her hands, saw the mark, and remembered. She was not here by accident. Her life had a purpose, and she had chosen to honor it. And you? Have you ever noticed a special mark on your hands? Perhaps, like Clara, you are destined for something far greater than you imagine.